Hi, this is Karl Newell again with Remax West, and I'm here with Dawood, real estate professional in Florida, Orlando specifically, but I believe he services, all over Florida. He's gonna let us know a little bit about himself, and we're just so happy to have him here. I believe everyone's gonna find this content very valuable today. Hi, Dawood, welcome.
Thank you for having me on the show, Carl.
No problem. Do you mind telling us a little bit about yourself?
Yeah, sure. So where do I start off with? I moved to the US 22 years ago, originally Canadian. Was living in Canada prior to that. My family still lives up there. I have a lot of wonderful friends, amazing clients, and extended family that I love to come and see whenever I'm in town. I am both American and Canadian. I've been a real estate agent for close to 18 years. And needless to say, I think after coming back and forth to Canada for the last, I would say 16, 17 years or so, I earned the moniker the Florida guy because every time I showed up, a lot of the other agents in Toronto are like, hey, the Florida guy is here. Let's make sure we get him in front of our clients so that they can learn more about the opportunities that exist in Florida. So
Awesome.
a little bit about myself.
hmm Yeah, this is
Good.
one of the reasons why I really want to speak with you, Dawood, because I understand that just based on the fact that you lived in Canada, you have a great comparison that other Florida realtors might not have, right? So I think that's great. So why don't you tell us a little bit of what's going on in Florida at the moment?
Yeah, so I think, if you go back into time, and we're talking about just before the market crashed in 2008, and you really started to analyze what were some of the hottest markets, you'll find that history, although it may not repeat itself exactly, it definitely echoes a lot of the same trends. So when you look at the markets that were the hottest at the time where people wanted to buy in, it was, in no particular order, Florida,
Hmm.
Texas, Arizona, Las Vegas, California. Now, of course, all of these places, if you look at it in terms of a map and you start to look right above it, you're either in the Northeast, Toronto,
Mhm.
Montreal, Ottawa, those bigger markets, or if you're in the middle, you're going somewhere to Texas, Arizona, or Las Vegas, if you're in Calgary or one of those places. And most likely, if you're on the West Coast, you would prefer to go to California because it's directly south of where you would be located in Western Canada. However, California tends to be really expensive. So the second best option in terms of investment for many people was the other four: Las Vegas, Arizona, Texas, and Florida. Now, during COVID, what did we see? There was a great migration that happened. And the great migration happened because, Florida and Texas both had very open policies about getting their economy kickstarted as quickly as possible. To the extent of we actually experienced COVID for 6 weeks. That was it.
Wow.
Everything else was pretty much open after the fact. Now, as time has gone on, we saw that during those patterns, a lot of people said, the weather's great over there. Cost of living is really great over there. Why not consider buying something in Florida? And you saw a lot of people, whether they were, the super elite, the wealthy people that were looking to buy, the mega penthouses and mansions on the water in terms of the super luxury market in Miami. We saw astronomical record-breaking prices,
Mm.
over 40, 50, 60 million dollars plus for real estate that was sold here and really hit some numbers that we had never seen before. But we definitely saw a lot of people wanting to migrate and relocate to places like Orlando, which are more affordable, which allow people to be in a situation where they can buy an investment, maybe a long-term rental, a short-term rental, where the median price point is approximately $400,000. So if you look at that and you look at a number like that and you start to consider or compare your market, whatever market you're in, whether you're in, you know, the the Northeast, for example, or Midwest markets like Chicago, even Toronto, what can you buy for that kind of money? Nothing,
Right.
right? Or if you are, you're going to buy some three, 400 square foot studio or something or the other, a micro condo or whatever they call them these days. And so I think that there's a lot of really great opportunities over here. I think a lot of Canadians are flocking here because the price, I think because of the weather. But there's a lot of favorable tax laws. It's easy for Canadians to get financing to start off with. There's a lot of Canadians that have decided to open up or expand their businesses and relocate to Florida. It was a major trend that we saw with a lot of the immigration lawyers and a lot of the other partners that we have that service all of our Canadian needs. So when you start to factor in all of those, you know, drivers that drive our market, and then you couple that with properties that actually cash flow, not net neutral, not net negative, but actually cash flow, right? And then you look at other properties that we call lifestyle assets, which are ones that you can manage, you can rent, and then you can use whenever you want. We have that asset class here, and it's not restricted like many other cities. A lot of cities are shutting down Airbnbs, short-term rentals in the market because they don't want short-term rentals in the same buildings as residential units, or for example, the condo board or the homeowners association board don't want those types of properties. We have a
Right.
whole designated area beside Disney called the Four Corners that you can get in one of these incredible properties, whether it's a 5 bedroom to a 10, 12 bedroom house or a 5 bedroom townhouse with a private swimming pool in the back. A lot of these communities have $20 million clubhouses with every bell and whistle and restaurant and bar and gym facility, lazy rivers, kids splash pools, amusement areas, whether it's arcade centers and stuff like that, all within these communities that really help make your guest experience a memorable one.
Nice.
And cheaper, of course, because you don't have to spend all the money in admission fees and food and beverage at the parks. You can obviously offset all of those expenses by staying in one of these short-term rentals. And if you think about it, a lot of the people that come to the Orlando market, they're coming with their immediate family. Their immediate family may consist of 4 to 5 people. Most often, they are coming with their family members, mother, brother, sister, or best friends and their kids. And before you know it, the numbers now all of a sudden jump up to 8, 12, 16 very, very, very quickly. So it
Hmm.
becomes a lot more affordable to start considering wanting a short-term rental rather than renting out 6 hotel rooms for the night.
Right, right. So, just speaking regarding that, what do you think, or the Canadians that are coming down to purchase, are they typically buying more long-term rentals or short-term rentals? What is the trend that you're seeing? And which one
So
do you typically recommend for even first-time investors in Florida?
I think I like to use this term. It's called an end investment, not an investment, but an end investment, END. And really, it's how do we look at our investment from the end? What's our goals? Are we going to eventually want to use it more often? Are we looking to retire in this? Is this a pure cash flow move? Are we just trying to, park money here and just move it outside of our countries? There's so many different variables based on the the person buying and more importantly the country of origin for their intended purpose or intention for why they're actually doing this, right? So when the market crashed in 2008, we were selling condos for 1 bedroom, 2 bedroom condos starting from $69,000, right? And that came with a 2 year rental guarantee and 2 year property management. Those same condos today are 175 or $200,000. So you definitely would have tripled or quadrupled your money had you just sat on it for this period of time. Now, during this time, you could only purchase these properties cash. So what ended up happening, in fact, is banks like TD and RBC started to move into the markets. And actually, TD was called the fastest growing bank in America. That was their tagline because they were just popping up all over the place. And of course, being TD, being the sister company to the Canadian branch, what ended up happening is you saw a lot of Canadians that ended up wanting to take advantage of the financing that was being open and available to them with as little as 20 to 25%, depending on what type of property they were purchasing. So when you start to factor in all of these things, you start to understand how the trend has changed. If you're able to secure a mortgage for $250,000 or $300,000 or $400,000, many people considered buying some beach condos at the time, or even smaller vacation rentals. Vacation rentals started to become really popular. And the one thing that we kept hearing from all of our Canadians all the time was, listen, I want to buy a property, but I also want to use it. But when you're in a long-term investment, it's really hard to do that because once your tenant leaves, now you have to come in, you have to furnish the place, you have to do all of this kind of stuff. And then what are you going to do with all the furniture once you decide to leave? So I think every market and every moment in time offers something really unique. I feel like there's a lot of people that I'm dealing with that are Canadian that are falling into two categories. I'm working with a lot of Canadian investors that are building portfolios and actually going out and buying vacation homes because A, they like them, two, they can use them. And whether they're breaking even or cash flowing or not cash flowing for that matter, one of the advantages that they have is that they want to be able to use these properties as often as possible. And we oftentimes talk about the best things about the Florida investments. The worst thing about a Florida investment is once you buy this property, you're going to see family members come out of the woodworks because they're going to want to use your property as often as
Right.
possible.
Yeah. Mm, that's great. So why, I know we spoke about the Florida market in general, but specifically in Orlando. What's going on in Orlando in the real estate market there now?
That's a fantastic question. And I think what I'd really like to do is I'd really like to set um, you up or your, sorry, I would like to set you up or your audience up to really understand what's driving the market. And I'm going to explain this to you in a way so that you can really kind of get a top-down view of, why this market. So the Orlando market, the drivers for the Orlando market is number one, a really strong and affordable real estate market. There's a high demand for rentals. More than 65.3% of our population are renters, and these units are renter occupied. There's a lot of tax benefits here because in Florida we have no state income tax, which is no provincial income tax. We have a thriving tourism industry with 74 million people that came to visit last year. One city. So that's literally double the population of all of Canada coming to visit one city.
Right.
We have a growing population. We're at about 2.2 million, and they are saying that by 2030 they're anticipating 5.3 million. I don't know if it's going to hit that number, but a double in population is definitely a lot of growth for a city in a very short period of time. Talking about the next 6 years or 5 years or so. So, I mean, we have favorable weather, climate. I mean, I have friends visiting from Canada now during the holiday season, wanting to take advantage of the great weather that we have and so on and so forth. And yeah, even for us, it's a little chilly, but chilly for you guys is maybe a long sleeve shirt or something or the other. So it's definitely an exciting place to be. Um, when you have that many visitors, when you're the number one tourist destination, when your median price of a home is under 400 grand, all of these factors become really interesting driving factors as to why Florida is a great place to invest in.
Understood. That's some good insight. And seeing that you've worked with many Canadians purchasing in Florida, how do they typically go about the mortgage process? How does that work?
So why don't we just take a step back and actually tell you a little bit more about what exactly we do for Canadians? Because I mean, being a Canadian, I think one of the things that you notice first and most is what pitfalls do Canadians run into when they're buying a property? And it's usually if you're able to answer these three questions, I think the obstruction or the objection of not wanting to do this becomes even easier because we've removed all of the pain points, which is number one. How do I get a mortgage? You don't worry about that. I'm going to take care of this. I'm going to connect you with the right people that will be able to secure a mortgage for you as a Canadian for a US mortgage here. No, you cannot go to a Canadian bank to get a US mortgage. They will not be able to do that for you. They'll give you a 1-800 number, which I highly recommend that you don't call the 1-800 number and just deal with one of the direct representatives that we have. Because if there's any issues, we can always call them versus track down a random person in a call center.
Hmm.
Right. Another question comes up with regard. Oh, by the way, and a lot of the documentation is very much the same of what you would present in Canada, 2 years tax returns, pay stubs, the whole nine yards, bank account, so on and so forth, so that they're able to vet you. And they're using your Canadian credit to be able to determine a loan for you here in the US. So, I mean, that's definitely a really attractive part, which makes it easier for Canadians, almost more so than any other foreign national, because the US and Canada's laws are so similar, the credit rating, banking systems, that it becomes easier to lend to Canadians rather than, for example, any other country in the world. And usually, a lot of the other countries end up having to put down a lot more down payment as well, too. Maybe sometimes 25, 30, 35. I've even seen 40%, depending on where their country of origin is.
Okay. So just for general knowledge, because you mentioned that other countries might have to put down that specific amount of down payment. For a Canadian, what would be the minimum amount based on your
I think a safe amount to consider for investment property would be about 25%.
okay, fair. Very good. Very
Get
good.
the income that you're getting, and the mortgage is being paid off by the cash flow that you're getting in US dollars.
Hmm.
Right.
Yeah.
And another thing that it sounds very obvious, but a lot of Canadians don't realize this, is if we're looking at a $500,000 property, for example, just as a round number, don't tack on 35% on top of that. It's not what you're going to end up paying for.
Hmm.
The 35% exchange rate is only going to be exposed to your down payment.
Got you.
The 35% of the 30% essentially will be on the down payment that we're putting on, and that's the only time where you're going to see the exposure to the exchange rate there. Now you're going to be making income in US dollars because the currency is in US, the bookings are in US, your property's in the US, and we'll also help you open a bank account if you need furniture packages, property management, everything along the way that's going to ease the process for you to purchase a property in Florida. We're here to assist you with it. Our job doesn't finish at finding the property for you and or at closing for that matter.
Got you. Understood. And of course, that would we understand that you're not an accountant and you're not really providing any accountant advice or anything like that. But based on your knowledge, do you know if there's any tax implications for Canadians buying in the US?
So great question. And I love that you asked this question because, I think this is a great question to dispel a lot of myths Canadians have. So for starters, the first myth is, can you buy as a Canadian? Yes, you can. There's nothing that stops a Canadian to buy property in the US. Nothing, right? Are you double taxed? No, you're not. All the tax collector is looking to do is to say, look, are you an investor or are you resident of the city or state? If you are, you get a homestead exemption. Otherwise, everybody else pays the same tax rate without a homestead exemption, whether you're from Canada, China, or any other country in the world, or even the US, right? As an investor. So that's really important to know too. I think when we are able to actually team you up with our tax advisor and tax experts, I think what you will come to realize or your clients will come to realize is that everybody's circumstances are different. Oftentimes, the questions that they're going to ask is, how do I take ownership in this property? Do I take it in a trust? Do I take it in my personal name? Do I take it in an LLC? And what are the implications, tax implications as a Canadian if I was to do that? I
Mhm.
can tell you one thing for a fact, and I'm not an accountant, but from personal experience, LLCs are probably the worst instrument to be able to buy a property as a Canadian. And many would tell you to buy it in your own personal name. And if you're looking for asset protection, to buy it in a trust. And we can assist you with all of that as well, too. So we're here to hold your hand along the whole way in order to ensure your success and make sure that you avoid all pitfalls along the way.
Very good. Awesome. My last question is, why do you think, again, you have experience in both markets, why should a Canadian really consider purchasing a property in Florida rather than America? I know you brought up some key insights, but anything else you want to mention why Canadians should really purchase in Florida over Canada if they have two equal options?
I'm going to ask you a question.
Sure.
Every winter, you've probably asked yourself, told yourself, or at least thought it. Because if you answer yes to this question, I bet you every other Canadian is experiencing the same thing. And it normally sounds like this. There's a little voice in your head that goes, this is the last freaking winter. I'm going to stay in Canada. So let's start off there. I think that's a good motivating reason to want to get out. And listen, if you can jump in your car, if you can jump on a plane, why not stay in your property in Florida?
Hmm.
Right? You have great weather all year round. You have the most coastal mileage than any other city. In an hour and a half to 3 hours, you can pretty much cover the whole state of Florida. You're not driving for hours and hours and hours. Every city has something new to do. You can go to Miami, you can go to Fort Lauderdale, you can go boating, you can go to the Everglades, you can go to a hot spring, you can go to amusement parks. There's just so much to do here, and the cost of living is very affordable as compared to many other places. I find Toronto to be astronomically expensive.
Hmm.
And when you're looking at price points of around $500,000 for, an entry level property that you would consider as an investment, A, it's a lot cheaper than anything you can buy. You can get financing here too as a Canadian. It can cash flow depending on how you buy it and where the interest rate is at, of course. And I think just overall, it's a great way to diversify your portfolio without having to fork out double or triple the amount of money to buy a comparable property.
Hmm.
It's in the US. It's in a safe economy and safe country. The banking system is great. And fortunately, based on the way that the country is set up, you're not going to run into some of the issues that a lot of South American people are doing when they consider buying real estate properties. Sometimes they don't buy them for cash flow. What they really buy them for is stability in the market and their ability to be able to park their money in a safe place where there's not going to be a political coup, currency devaluation, and so on and so forth. So I think those are some really great reasons to do that. And then I think one of the best questions or the best way to answer a question is by turning the question over to you. I'm going to say this as a joke, and yes, I am Canadian, so I can say this. What's the best market to invest in Canada?
The best market to invest in Canada, many would say Toronto.
How about Florida? And I say the reason for that is because Canadians account for the number one purchasers of Florida properties
Wow.
and US properties in general. So more than 13% of all foreign national purchases were purchased by Canadians. And for the price point being where it's at, that's why I'm able to make this joke to say the best market for Canadians to invest in is obviously Florida.
Yeah.
It's cheaper, it can cash flow, and you can definitely diversify your portfolio. Obviously, the Toronto market is booming and the appreciation is great and the city is growing and it's bustling. But, in many ways, Toronto is like a New York or Chicago, or it's, the Canadian version of those cities, anyways.
Right.
So definitely, if there are reasons why you want to invest in your specific market, the Canadian market, you know, by all means do that. But what I would definitely urge you to do is to have your viewers or your clients connect with you more importantly, and at least explore this opportunity because I think their dollar can go a lot further. I think the memories can go a lot deeper for what you can create with your friends, families, loved ones over here. And I think it's a really great way to diversify your portfolio for a very inexpensive, safe, and financeable way to be able to do that as well too.
Awesome. Very, very insightful. Thank you for this, Dawood. Is there anything else you want to leave with our audience before we go?
I think the best way to learn about anything new is to just immerse yourself and expose yourself to as much information as you possibly can. And if you don't mind, what I think would like to share with your clients is if there's a way that they would want to learn more, it's just visit my Instagram profile page, which is at Dawood Bedrosian, on Instagram, on LinkedIn, on Facebook. I also have a YouTube page. All you have to do is type in my name, Dawood Bedrosian, look me up. I'm covering a lot of different content on terms of what's happening in the market. I have my own podcast and radio show that I've been doing for the last couple of years. So, I'm definitely on the pulse with our podcast, RealSense Now. If you're listening to a pod, definitely check me out at RealSense Now at Dawood Bedrosian. I'd be more than happy to kind of provide you with more information or just reach out to me or just set up a one-on-one call with me and you so that they can actually learn more about the opportunity and see if this is a viable fit for them.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Dawood, for your time. This has been very informative, and hopefully we will all be in contact with you soon.
Oh, we sure will. Looking forward to seeing you in Florida. Thanks, Carl.
You're very welcome. Take care.